Hello and welcome to the Thursday, February 7th, 2013 Audit Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. First, we need to review and approve the minutes from the meeting held on Monday, December 10th, 2012.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Hoppegaard.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you. We'll move on right into our reports and updates. Start off with our audit review of the library.
Okay, I think Danette's going to take this one because she did the audit, so let her take it.
The library audit was a requested audit that was approved for the 2012 audit plan by the audit committee. The Siouxland Libraries is a joint agreement with the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County, and through this process we developed 7 objectives to review the library procedures. Those included revenue and expenditure and internal controls for the library are reasonable, that gift, memorial, and grant procedures are followed and expenditures are in accordance with designations, that the library courier process that delivers material between the branches will allow sufficient time for an additional branch stop when the Prairie West location opens in later this year, that existing contracts and agreements are in compliance, cash handling procedures are adequate and accurate, that material holds, new material requests, physical locations, and weeding processes of the library materials are reasonable, and that fixed assets are accurately recorded. The scope for this audit was primarily 2012 and the processes that were in place at the time of the audit. The results are that the review showed that the processes for the policies and procedures for the Sioux Falls City and State of South Dakota are being followed as established. The library has good internal controls, and revenues and expenditures are being recorded according to policy and procedure and in line with prior years. The library gifts, memorials, and grants are properly accounted for, and expenditures are made according to gift designations. The courier process does appear to have adequate time available to add the additional stop for Prairie West location. The library appears to be in compliance with all current contracts and agreements, and library materials are properly efficiently, and fixed assets are properly accounted for. There was one recommendation that we had based on the deposit and cash handling processes. Through the sampling of deposits, I traced to the Horizon Library System, which is the system that tracks all the patrons and if there's fees and fines, etc., and the payment of those. And some deposits didn't agree between the cash register, the amount that was deposited, and what was posted in that system. Management agreed with the finding and the recommendation that we had that those need to have just a better control over those so that everything is accounted for properly. Management's response is that they are going to add a line to the deposit sheets to help explain which deposit dates are being covered through the Horizon system. That's currently not on the form. The branch managers do currently do some random checks to the Horizon system, and the circulation manager is going to write up detailed directions for doing that just to make sure they're being done properly, and that is currently being put into place. And a cash register is being added at the Hartford branch as they continue to grow their number of transactions so that they have an actual cash register rather than just a cash box. So in conclusion, there appears to be a good policy and procedure following. They're very focused on customer satisfaction, and it's a very good process that is being followed by the library. With that, if there's any questions.
Any questions for Danette? Councilor Rolfing?
Yeah, Danette, the handling procedure not disturbs me, but it sends up a red flag when things don't balance up. And I'm just wondering, how much money are we talking about here? Are we talking about $10,000 or are we talking about $25?
It was very minimal amounts. Some deposits were, well, every deposit that I traced, I think there was 3 to 5 that had an error, and they were all under $10. And the biggest concern is that we actually had more money being deposited than what was in the Horizon system. So the concern really is that the patron side may not be correct, which we can always make adjustments for those if they come in and say, I paid this, you haven't taken it off of my account, and that tends to be what happens. But that is also tracked to make sure that we're not writing off a bunch of patron things, and nothing was out of line there. So it's just to get a better control on even those $5, $10 discrepancies.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? That there- not just-
Right offhand, I know how materials go through.
My head. Transitions to about 1,000.
Okay, so you need to be motivated to keep, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you sound like you have some plans worked out, so that's good.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Danette, anything else you need to?
I don't have
wrap up?
anything else unless you guys have any other questions.
Rich, anything you need to add?
No, I think we had a very good audit. It was a pleasure working with the library management, so we're just thankful for their cooperation and assistance.
All right, very good. And if there's no more questions, I'll take a motion to accept the report.
So moved, Rolfing.
Second Aguilar.
We have a motion, and it's been, all those in favor say aye. Move on to our next audit, the review of the audit for water.
This was on our annual audit plan, and we'd already done an audit back in 2008, so we built upon that audit that we'd done 4 years ago on the water distribution system. What we concluded was that I think we're doing a very good job with the water department. We have excellent quality of water. As far as our objectives on the audit, we looked at the status of audit recommendations that we made back in 2008 and that were agreed to just to kind of see where we're at, the status of those recommendations. We looked at 2 performance measures that the water departments often use. One is the number of water main breaks per mile, and the other was the percentage of unaccounted for water. We want to see if those performance measures were calculated correctly, what the process was, and if they were indeed at or below the industry standards. We looked at internal controls over the supplies and materials inventory. They have quite an extensive supplies and parts inventory at the water plant. And then we looked at the financial condition of the water enterprise fund. You know, the water department has to, they don't use tax dollars, they use the user fees, the customer billings to finance our operations. And there were 8 financial ratios that we looked at that were to kind of get an overall conclusion on the financial status of the enterprise fund. As far as the results were concerned, I think we had 5 recommendations, or I think it was 4 recommendations from 2008. We kind of gave an update on where we're at on those. The financial condition of the enterprise fund was very good. We looked at those 8 ratios. For example, the quick ratio, the current ratio, a lot of these have to do with the solvency of the enterprise fund. You know, are they in a position to pay their bills on time? What about their receivable collections? And they collect their bills very well. And Perry would point out that if people don't pay their water bill, we will turn off the water. So we collect our bills, and we just have, we're building a very, very good reserve in that water enterprise fund. The intention over the 9 years or so to pay off about $43 million in debt. So they're building up the reserves. They also want to have reserves in place that if something unexpected comes up, they have money for capital repairs. And it's always prudent to have a, X number of days of cash set aside for operating funds. We looked at what the GFOA recommends. The GFOA is the Government Finance Officers Association, and they have a best practice on how much reserve should be kept in the enterprise fund. They recommend that you start with a base of 90 days of operating funds as a reserve, and that at no point you go below 45 days of reserves. And from that base of 90, then you can adjust up or down depending on your local circumstances. In the case of the City of Sioux Falls, we like to have, the policy is to have 180 days at least of reserve fund just for all our enterprise funds, I think with the exception of the landfill. So they met that goal of having at least 180 days of operating funds in reserve. We had two recommendations. One goes back to 2008. We'd recommended that they develop a formal water valve exercising program, and what that is, it's not jumping jacks or something for your water valves, but what it means is of all the many valves that you have in your distribution system, and I believe they have around 19,000 water valves, that the utility crew should open and close those on a regular basis, because the problem is if you have a valve and you don't use it for years and years, you have a buildup of deposits in there. So when it comes time that you have to isolate a water main, you have a water main break, you have to isolate the system, and you go over there and you start to put the torque on your valves. Sometimes they don't work. They might get frozen. They might break. So the idea of a valve exercising program is to, on a systematic basis, go through, locate all your valves and move them up and down on a periodic basis. When we recommended that in 2008, they had agreed with that. This isn't easy to implement. And the status of that right now is they will be pursuing that in 2013 with more of a formal program. They'd like to point out that just in normal operations, they probably exercise around 2,000 of the 19,000 per year, just when they have a water main break or when they're doing a construction. There's a cost to doing this, such a program. You need people, you need manpower to do that. There's also that you might and cause your customers, and so there's a cost. We think that over time, the benefit is to find risk in the cost. So they agreed to that. Read the on page 11. And the other one recommendation we had to do with the internal controls over the supplies and parts inventory. We felt like the segregation of duties could be better. The full-time parts worker is doing most of the steps involved in maintaining inventory, ordering the parts, doing the accounts, counting the material every week, making the adjustments, receiving the parts. When we talk to management, ideally you would segregate all those functions. That's not practical in this situation, and so and also the nature of the inventory items. Most of them are not. We wouldn't consider easily convertible to cash, but we felt like there should be at least some compensating control. And so management has come up with a solution they think that they can work to get a little bit of a management a review of what the parts worker does in order to mitigate that risk. So we're satisfied with that response. So those are the two recommendations, just to continue that developing a formal valve exercise program and then develop compensating control over the inventory. So I addressed both of those issues, and financially it's doing well. The two performance measures were below the industry standards. The water breaks per mile were definitely below the industry standard, and the percentage of unaccounted water was well below the industry standard. So we felt like the infrastructure was in good condition based upon those two performance measures. So I know management is here if you have any questions about this audit. So,
any questions for the water department staff? Councilor Rolfing?
Yeah, I wanted to find out a little bit more what you guys think of this this exercising the water valve program. You got any thoughts on that?
Valve. Back in 2008, recommended employees are hired to have expedite in place. Now, 11, when it was raised, us, so to the count that anyway, valves that size basis and valve. It's not part of a program. It's every activity. Working in other parts of this. In a roundabout way, get to each valve approximately 10 years. To exercise a valve, would rather have to do that from October through March because of the cold weather, the freezing. If we break a valve, water on the street, now we're dealing with traffic. We have to make the repair, and now a whole street that we can't put concrete in or put blacktop in. So it's not to do that. And then in summertime, extremely busy with projects involved, projects and other construction projects. So it's not good to do it in the winter, and we're very busy in the summer. But we've decided to focus on and formalize a program. Hopefully, with the new software we'll be able to track this on a work order basis, and the information will be entered into GIS. Right now, we're behind the 8 ball. We don't have a software program that allows us to go out, perform the work, enter the data that you would want to collect on a valve, like how many turns did it open easy or was it difficult? Is it right turning or left turning? When was the last time? Did you do any maintenance? So that data is all kept on like a spreadsheet. So hopefully with the new financial software and the maintenance software, we'll be able to put all this on a work order system, and we can send this out. So when there is time available, they can go into a certain area. But when you start exercising valves, it's not as simple as just going out and doing that. You have to plan your area. You're going to have to communicate to the customers. You're going to have to put barricades on streets. You're going to have to do it between the hours of 9 and 3, so we're not impacting traffic on rush hour, either going to work or coming home from work. If this customer uses water and there's a potential for rusty water and it's going to impact their service, well, you can't really do that when they're in business, or we could shut them down. So there's quite a number of factors that goes into putting together a program, scheduling it, and working it.
What are the procedures?
As Rich said, if you for a long period of time and you have some doesn't really, it can impact a small area or a small customer base, because if this valve doesn't work, we're not going to break it. We're just going to go back another 300 feet and get on this valve, or we'll go back another 300 feet and get on the next valve. So instead of shutting down 12 customers, we may be shutting down 24 customers, 46 customers. I don't believe we have a system that's that poor of shape to have to worry about that too much. We may have to go back one block and isolate it, but that's about it.
What is the cost of replacing one of those? Is it one?
Well, typically, if we have to excavate down, put a new valve in, we have the fill we pay for, we have the blacktop or the concrete we pay for, we have the cost, we have the labor cost, and an 8-inch valve was probably $1,800 to $3,000, depending on what kind. So it could be anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000 for every time we have to go down and make a repair.
And if went and turned it every other.
Trying to get at is an hour later.
Yeah, I'm just, have we done a cost analysis on that at all?
Well, it's a best practice. It's AWWA, I think, recommends it. that they think over time it's cheaper to do it through your, a formal program rather than for when you need to do it and then it breaks. And like you say, if say during you had to exercise the valve or you had to isolate a line in the winter and it broke, it's a real pain in the winter to do the repairs. So.
What is the recommended interval? Test.
Yeah. I haven't gotten that far in the manual to give you.
Would be
an
interesting to see if there's a nationwide study. It would seem that there should be a recommendation on the intervals that those should be tested at, and maybe take a look at what the cost would be if there would be additional manpower. That would, obviously there probably would be, but if that would be a cost benefit that we could look at from that standpoint. Does that make sense?
Us out and valves, and at the end of the day they go home and that's all they do.
And if you're in a warm weather climate, that's
We have a very no.
No remote.
When there's no emergency, my crew is at the street department.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Okay. Well, I don't know if we want to get a report back on this or what, but.
Well, the option might be direct.
Well, that our bids are used take like around the hospital or the use industry. Look at critical valves first. Start working on those with a program and a program. From there, and expand it to look at the valves that are the general valves that run down your street. So there's basically two classifications. You got your critical use valves and then your normal valves.
Could you make an effort then before this comes to the, we'll hopefully approve this and bring it on to council for approval, but I will remember to ask you about the industry is elapse time between inspections.
I'll try to find that number.
I would appreciate it. Thanks.
we plan to present this to the council on March 5th if you approve the report. So just
Yep.
Get
Find out by the end of the day tomorrow, and I'll send them an email.
Recently, I think about recall those and new valve those
The one valve and dress body the valve in there and put in new bolts.
So if you've got a water main break, bring along just in case, because
We cars, we trucks, truck. And I find so the practice it pretty takes a loader to pick a valve up and put it in the.
oh,
I mean, we have repair sleeves and bolts take with it. There's actually a valve fit. Some to the shop and get it.
the new valves, are they product previous ones that were put in the ground?
Well, the valves long. Early 80s, they specified that bolts and corrosive bolts wasn't as knowledgeable at the time. So from the early 80s to the early 90s, we put a lot of valves out there that had carbon steel bolts that are susceptible to the corrosion in the soil. So most of our valve failures are because corrosion ate away the bolt, and then there's nothing to hold it together anymore. Some undue stress on it, and the top of the valve will separate from the body of the valve. So then we have a water leak. So typically what we do is we excavate, yep, it was corrosion, and we put in steel bolts. But it just wouldn't be cost effective for us to go out and dig 7,000 holes to put in bolts and valves.
Right.
So we do it every time we have failure.
Yeah.
But there isn't anything that we can do now about the specs that were written in 1979 to 1980. And the knowledge of corrosive back then isn't nearly as well as it is today. Experience.
The big thing is that you're the best that we can.
Right. Right now, all of our valves are spec'd with stainless steel bolts. They have been for quite a few years, as I understand, because the carbon steel bolts just didn't work. And when we go out there, we put in stainless steel bolts. It's really quite amazing. You can go out there and you dig down in the bolts, and the valve itself still has the original paint and looks like it's brand new, but there's no bolts holding it together. Literally.
Really?
They're gone. Well, the it is that not as there's no. Still, and away we're going.
One thing the city did back about 20 years ago, early 90s, is they did a major water main cleaning and lining project, which I think life.
Water main still water main. Then it's scraped off the bill. So you don't have a side diameter of a 2 still it bought us the time.
Don't go to yet. The question was work account.
A lot of money in it. But the point is, there's going to be a true up on the Lewis and Clark. You know, we prepaid our share, which was $70 million. We bonded for that. I think the council's aware of that. There's going to be a true up, I believe, in the year 2020 to 2022. You know, the final cost of Lewis and Clark. So that's going to be a major debt to be paid. There's debt from the state revolving fund loans. So I believe it was $43 million over the next 10 years that is going to have to be paid out of the Water Enterprise Fund. So the reserves are being built up. The council approved water rate increases, I think, in 2011 and 2012, I believe. Significant. I think we went years without any water rate increases. So it's looking very, very healthy. And you might say, well, why do we need so much cash in there? That's the reason. And also just have a reserve period in case you have unexpected expenditures that you didn't anticipate.
6 months is not unreasonable.
That's not unreasonable. That's the policy of Public Works. GFOA says start with 90 and then go up or down depending on local conditions, what you're trying to accomplish. So I don't think that's excessive, what we have built up. So.
And we may not be done with Lewis and Clark at all.
Yes.
Thanks, Greg.
Back up a couple of things that Greg said. She talks about the program exercise related to the fact that there could be here. The most very rare to operate to shut down a neighborhood because of a main break. Go back. It doesn't happen that often. So our infrastructure is in good shape. And one of the things that Greg's talking about the we're seeing is out there are acting out those high areas, facing them, and we're program and make those repairs after that. And one of the dangers as look at a valve exercise is just the type of issue about is if you have a series of valves out there that are see those of bolt failures and that type of thing, you don't want to just go out and putting extra torque or pressure on that valve until you know the infrastructure is behind to make the kind of thing. So it's one of the things that you don't take lightly. You don't want to create more impact or more problems when you have that valve exercise and the program trying to. And so as we go forward and make those evaluations, those are the types of considerations that we make doing that. And then the last thing, as far as this utility, it's been a very capital-intensive utility, and we've borrowed a lot of money. We do the infrastructure improvements, the expansion at the water plant, and Lewis and Clark. And one of the things that we're trying to do with this utility is we're trying to convert from, for those smaller capital projects, we're trying to convert from borrowing money on a regular basis, which eventually costs our customers more because you're paying that interest and principal over time, and doing it with cash. And so those cash balances we had a great year last year from water sales. The years before, 2010, 2009, they were wet years. And so we actually sold less water than what we projected. And so one of the you have to keep in mind is as that rainfall goes and as those sales goes, so does the revenue to the fund. So 2012 or 13, I'm sorry, could be a year where we see another 25 or 30-inch rain year, and we won't have those sales. And so those capital reserves are going to move up and down. But we want to move away from borrowing money for those smaller types of capital projects that cost our customers more and move more toward a cash funding for those small capital projects. So I just wanted to round out a couple of things. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very good, Trent. Thank you. Any other questions, any concerns, anything? Okay, I would take a motion on this to accept the report. There's one.
So moved, Forbes.
Second, Oppegaard.
Very good. We have a motion. It's been seconded to accept the water audit report. All those in favor? We'll move on to our next audit on utility billing with Kim. Right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I did the audit for the utility billing department, and we looked at cash handling. That was part of our 2012 audit plan, and it was an audit that was required by Public Works. The utility billing department manages all the billing, payment, and accounting functions for the city-owned utilities. They have 8 full-time employees. We did review all of the different payment options, including mail payments, ACH, online. They have it's an IVR system where you can call in. All of those payment options do have controls in place. So we focused our audit on the over-the-counter collections when people drop off payments in person. We had 5 objectives. One was to determine if the controls over all forms of money, cash receipts, bank deposits are appropriate and functioning properly, to determine if cash receipts are deposited in a timely, secure, and accurate manner, to determine if adequate separation of duties exists, and if security procedures are in place and being followed, to determine if written cash handling policies and procedures include cash handling vendors are current, properly documented, and are being adhered to, and to determine if the water and sewer service rates and fees and cash-related policies and procedures are consistent with city ordinances, resolutions, and executive orders. We did look through, Perry had done some work throughout the year in regarding objective number 4 in writing or formalizing the cash handling policies and procedures, and we think he did a really good job of that. That was very helpful in our audit to have that documented. And the results were overwhelmingly good. We thought there was good separation of duties and procedures in place to secure the cash. We did have one audit finding. The billing cashiers are required every day to reconcile their cash drawers to the prior day's summary report. That summary report breaks down credit card payments, cash payments, check payments, all those different types into subtotals. And we did sample, I believe, 44 days worth of summary reports, and we found a couple instances where the total deposit matched up with what hit the bank, but the cash and the checks were crossed off, and there was less cash and more checks. And in discussions with Perry, that happens when one of the billing cashiers will cash a check for a city employee, which is within the city policies. The only problem with that is there was not documentation saying that they did that. So we discussed that, and he was on board with the changes, that they will document whenever they do, whenever they have any discrepancies on that summary. They were not really on board with keeping a copy of the check just for security measures, and we think that's just fine. They're going to note the payee, the check number, and the amount, and the reason for the change. So everything went well. I thank Perry for all his efforts, and the staff was very friendly to work with. So if there's any questions.
Any questions for Kim on how that was done? Or
I have one.
yes.
You said there's good controls in place for all the other forms of payment. What percentage of payments are collected through the over-the-counter billing clerks?
Percentage-wise,
that number might a very small percentage, like come through online, small percentage of customers and pay over the counter.
Thank you.
I can say I did go out and observe over-the-counter collections. I was probably there for 3 hours and maybe saw 10, 12 customers come in. So really it's, I think, significant of the total, but the highest risk area.
I only had one other. When I read the report, the check cashing by the employee, just a little. I just remember back at an old job that when I read that city, but you referred to the manual of.
We followed up on it.
It is allowed.
It is allowed.
By city policy allows employees to cash their checks
Was
up
it
to a certain amount.
Up to $25.
I think
I
$25,
believe.
I think, yes. So.
I don't know, it's maybe not a big deal, but it just kind of struck me as odd that I see that happening at a small time, nothing.
I question as well, and with my convenience, you wouldn't think there'd be a need, but.
We haven't had any issues with. I hate to even ask because it's not.
It happened once or twice. Drops a check. Here's actually be had type of with department bring a other is selling pizzas or cookies. A lot of people don't cash nowadays. They'll cash for $10 and don't do that. So this happen would be not.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Barry.
Back out to the charity.
Rich, anything you need to add or want to add?
I just think the internal controls are just very good out there. There's a lot of cash, a lot of money that goes through the utility billing office. It's located across the street from the arena, and they handle the billing for the water customers, the sewer, and the light department. And so, but in general, internal controls are well designed and functioning properly. So.
Thanks, Kim. Given that, we'll accept a motion to accept the audit.
Move approval.
Second.
You have a-
Aguilar.
We have a motion made and it's been seconded to accept. Right, move. 022. Rich?
Okay, I think we've already discussed this as previous meetings, but we have this on the, we plan to present this to the council, the ordinance on February 13th, which will be next Wednesday, for the first reading, and then the second reading on the 19th. And all it is just to change my job title from lead internal auditor to internal audit manager. And I think there was also a reference to city clerk in there, so that's basically what we did, change the job title and deleted the reference to city clerk, you know, my report to city clerk. So we're just chance before we city next week. So we're just seeking your approval and to reflect that in the minutes. So.
All right, Rich had initially wanted the word czar used, audit czar,
I
but
thought it was dictator.
something like that. All right, yeah, pretty straightforward, a little bit of paperwork that we've got to do in order to change this, but the concern, it's pretty simple, straightforward.
Just some housekeeping, really, on that one. So we just need a motion and a.
Do you need
I think we want to reflect that in the minutes. So we.
All right. Okay, well then we need to have a motion to accept the language that's been proposed.
So moved, Aguilar.
Second, Rolfing.
It's been made, it's been seconded. All in favor? Good, Rich. There you go. Next item.
I think we've discussed at the previous meeting. This is a resolution, and the difference is an ordinance requires 2 readings before the City Council. Resolution is basically a one-time, and so we've scheduled that with the City Clerk's office for February 19th to do this resolution, which will coincide with the second reading of the previous ordinance. So what this is the internal audit charter, which is a requirement of if we're going to have a peer review, which we'll talk about next on the agenda. It's kind of our, what we call in the military, our marching orders, our scope, our mission, our authority, that sort of thing. You put that in the charter. We deleted the references to city clerk. In other words, my reporting to the city clerk, all that was deleted. We changed the job title from lead internal auditor to internal audit manager. I think we added a line on page 4 about professional standards. I think we added that line about the code of ethics, and that's to getting ready for peer review if they'd like to see that. On the very last page, you'll see there's an executive endorsement. We put down the chair of the audit committee, the mayor, the chair of the council, and then I would acknowledge that as the final signature. That would be something the peer review team would be looking for on the charter. They would expect to see that you have an internal audit charter and that you have, endorsement from top management. And then I think we had another minor change on the on page 5. It had to do with investigating fraudulent activities. We just added the line that if we do investigate fraudulent activities, it would be in accordance with the fraud control policy, which was adopted by the City Council this past fall. So I think we didn't really change a whole lot in this charter from the original charter, other than the job title, deleting references to city clerk, and then a couple of minor tweaks there. So we're just seeking again your approval before we put this on the agenda for the full City Council.
Any questions about the resolution, language, charter?
Yes, I have a few things that, in reading this through, that struck attention. One on page 4, under accountability, the second arrow, report significant issues related to the processes for controlling the activities of the City of Sioux Falls, including potential improvements of those processes, and provide information concerning such issues through resolution.
Yes.
Would that be, and I put on there, or reports? Because a lot of times you come with reports
Yes.
on how those should be taken care of. Those activities should be taken care of, not just resolutions? Or do they only come through via resolutions? Just a question I had in my mind.
I think when they're talking about resolution, they don't mean necessarily a resolution before the city council like this would be adopted. I think what they're talking about is when we make an audit recommendation.
And then the resolutions
the resolution
within
would be the management agreement come back
could
with
be
the,
misinterpreted, though?
yeah.
As a resolution, could only be done through a resolution of the city council instead of a resolution within the audit report. I'm just saying that might be misinterpreted someplace, and that could limit the way you would report that. Everything would have to go through a resolution of the city council. And the wording might be that right away. Because resolutions in a chart, resolution,
Well,
No.
wouldn't it?
well, I can.
Somebody could take it that way? Okay.
Let's go to the other ones that you have, and maybe we'll summarize them all
Okay.
together.
Under the IMA has a responsibility or responsibilities. The second arrow again, implement the annual audit plan and approved, including as appropriate any special tasks or projects requested by the audit committee or council members. Believe you,
Well,
or do we need to put in for other people too?
we that previous on the and can plan that. It'd be approved before I can
Got it.
start that work. So that,
No problem. Just wanted to make sure that we were not excluding that situation, that either that or a department head could do it also.
yeah, and we have had both department heads and elected officials request things that weren't on the annual audit plan to kind of be a project. So
And then a small thing,
yeah.
on the next arrow, issue periodic reports to the audit committee. The audit committee will review these, issue these report and submit them to the mayor and city council. I just kind of reverse those two, city council and mayor, thinking that there's a committee of the city council, not of the mayor. Just a small thing.
Interesting, though, now that you say that, how are they presented to the mayor? Do you submit them some way?
Not per se. I don't send them an email with the report, but certainly they're a public report, and we present them at the informational meetings.
At the informational
Yeah.
meeting, but
Which the mayor is.
Mayor is invited.
invited.
Traditionally, the mayors have not attended unless they were something for the council, but there's certainly.
But I wondered about if they need to be presented to the mayor, there probably should be as a
And
courtesy.
I would assume that, I don't know this for sure, but I would assume the directors always let the mayor know
You bet.
about the reports. I'm sure they,
Just,
yeah. But no, do I send it to the mayor with the report attached? No, I do not do that. But well, be done. You can decide change council and then let them
Amend it then.
amend it then. That's that's the
Well,
option. Or just leave it.
Yes,
the way it is.
Councilor Aguilar.
technically, the mayor is part of the city council.
True.
So I guess I don't see any. This is from the original language.
This is from the
right?
original language. We didn't change any of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It-
So it's
it-
been like this since
I just wanted to make sure we knew what
2006 or
we're-
2007, yeah.
looking at there, and
I would say that's some way. And I'm probably,
I've gotten my explanation on it, that's fine.
okay.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that all?
Oh, you want me to have more?
Okay, well, very good stuff.
Oh, wait a minute, there was one more. Last page, amendment of the charter.
Yep.
Internal audit manager is responsible for maintain,
Where are you
On
at,
the,
Rich?
the
last page under amendment of the charter.
amendment of the charter, yeah.
Internal audit manager is responsible for maintenance of this internal audit charter to ensure that it is reviewed annually and is revised as necessary. Any amendment is subject to the review and approval of the audit committee only, or does that need to come to the full council for approval? If we're going to change this,
Well, we are changing it, so we do plan to present it to full council
Right.
because they adopted the original charter. So,
so my thought is that we should add to that and approval by council.
It was approved by the council.
then, and so this is the first time.
And I'm wondering if initially they did that because actually the audit function is supposed to be independent of any department or part of the city government.
The administration, right.
Administration, right, yeah.
But even, I mean, it's put under the city council, but it really is under the auspice of this body here.
Yes, that's
So
correct.
I'm wondering if that's why
That
the
language.
language was
Left that way.
drafted in this manner initially.
It's probably true, I would guess so. I wasn't obviously on the committee. I don't know what their thinking was, but I think they did this from another city. I don't know the conversation in 2006 when they discussed this, so, but that's probably correct.
See, I'm wondering if it really even had to, whether adjustments or amendments need to go because the language is, whether it needed to go to council for approval. If that was their intent.
That could have been that. Originally, it was approved by the full council, and from then on, it was up to the audit committee to,
Keep its autonomy,
yeah.
yeah,
Right,
keep
and
it right
that's-
with the, if I can interrupt, to keep the independence and autonomy, to keep it with the audit committee only.
And that's why it's so important to have non-council people or whatever on this body. That's supposed to give it its autonomy.
Yeah.
Pretty well.
Find out if that's exactly what they were intending to do or something.
We've taken one check off and another we've done.
One key I saw here was the annual review of it. Do we normally do that, Rich? Have you been?
I would review it, but I didn't feel like we needed to make any changes until my job title changed and we had the change in the org chart with the city clerk. Not, I don't report to the city clerk. So there didn't seem to be a need to change the audit charter.
And we did discuss this at one of our work sessions about, the need to take a look last year, I believe.
Mhm.
And so I think that having Rich look it over on a yearly basis, I don't know if it could be part of a yearly report to the audit committee if there was the need for any other changes.
You'll report back at our next meeting then?
The resolution is going to be for Rich, and he'll send it out or something, but we'll get it done right away.
Okay.
Yes?
But if it's not necessary, it could be withdrawn, couldn't it?
Yeah, I don't think the agenda, we were planning, when I talked to Lori, the city clerk, the plan was to put on the February 19th agenda. I don't think that's even been, I think, normally they do a week in advance, so that agenda I don't think has been developed yet.
Well, so would you like to wait, or we'll see how it goes? What's happening? We'll do it that way. Yes?
Two other points where Rich would sign off at the bottom of the form. Since we're including the names of the other parties, should we also include his name and then his title, City of Sioux Falls?
To be consistent with,
Yeah.
we could.
And then also,
Yeah.
just again, consistency, 3 approvals and 1 acknowledged date? Should it, or is there significance in that choice of acknowledged versus?
I think what it's saying is that I understand that this is what my superiors have endorsed or approved, and
Okay.
yeah, I think that's kind of the, and I think the reason that is in there is because the audit standards, what we call the Red Book, they would want to see that in your charter, that you get the highest possible endorsement of the audit function. So in a corporation, obviously you'd have, say, the chair of the board of directors and the CEO would say, here's what you should be doing, and yeah.
Okay, anything else on the charter? Okay, seeing none, then why don't we, Rich, you need that to be accepted as well, or what do you?
That'd be helpful, and then
Can I move approval with possible changes to the full council?
Right, because that would happen there anyway, so,
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay?
Okay.
So move.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion made and it's been seconded to accept the resolution with the notice that it could be updated by the council. All those in favor say
Aye.
opposed.
last meetings discussed the review process. That I just some talking points there. I'll go through them real quick. David Bixler was with contacting, which is our Association of Local Government. So he did the regional coordinator, which is Aaron Kenny, in Los with Los Fire, local government auditor like myself, but she's a volunteer coordinator for the United States. And she recommended, when she was to Mr. Bixler, about sending some to the national conference, and there was a workshop every year on how to do a peer review. And she also government anticipate a peer review budget of $5,000 to $7,000 every year that you were planning on having that peer review done. No fee charged by ALGA. The money is used to pay all the travel costs for the peer review team. When David and I talked, we think our costs would probably be closer to $5,000 than the $7,000, because it's basically airfare and per diem and that sort of thing. So I think we could that would so. Normally at that national conference, pre-conference, usually on the conference is Monday and Tuesday, and the pre-conference workshop is on Sunday. It's for 8 hours on doing the peer review. I've been meeting with my staff every week now. We've been discussing how to get ready for a peer review, and we ordered this book. It came in last week. Got it on Amazon, a used copy for $20. But we got the latest edition. I think I had the second edition in my office. Is how to implement the professional standards, and so we got the third edition. And what we're required to follow according to our audit charter is the Red Book standards, which are promulgated by the Institute of Internal Auditors. And actually, the standards themselves are probably maybe 20 pages of this book, and then the rest is how to accomplish that, or suggested ways to accomplish all these standards. So we're meeting every week. We're going to meet tomorrow morning, and we're kind of proceeding with that. And we would anticipate requesting a peer review team to come to Sioux Falls the latter half of next year, latter half of 2014. Peer review team would be 3 auditors from other local governments. They would come in on a Sunday. They'd speak in Sioux Falls. They'd review the policy and procedure manual we developed. They'd look at our audit work papers, audit reports. They'd probably interview city managers, members of the audit committee. And then they kind of wrap it up Friday morning, and then they'd be on their way. They would have a formal report that the audit committee would see, and basically they would have some overall conclusion whether you met the professional standards or did not, and they always have some recommendations, which are very helpful. And obviously, I said the city would pay their airfare, food and lodging, ground transportation, et cetera. The expectation of ELGA, which is primarily a volunteer organization, they have maybe 2 full-time employees, and the rest are just auditors like myself that volunteer their time and effort. They would expect that once we have gone through the, say, this peer review training, how to conduct a peer review, and then we've gone through it as an office ourselves, that we would make ourselves available, or the audit committee would say, if some other city wants you to come in and do a peer review, you would give us that week to go somewhere else and be part of the team. So what's the benefit to the city? Enhanced credibility of the audit department. We can say we comply with professional standards. We passed our peer review. And just going through the process, we learn a lot. And just doing peer reviews of other shops that we learn things, we learn best practices. So there's a lot of education that goes along with preparing for a peer review, and then later peer reviewing in other organizations. So that's kind of the quick and dirty. So
If I could wrap up just the, this all started with Councilor Rolfan asking who audits the auditor.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for getting Dave Bixler involved was to validate some of the research so that Rich wasn't getting estimates for himself. The council staff was, and just to add some insulation to the whole process, I think, and that was what I think that's unfolded as we had hoped and wanted it to, right? That's what our intentions were. Councilor Rolfing, what are you thinking? How do you feel about this? You were the one who kind of started this.
Looks reasonable, I guess, and I like the idea of once the experiences happen here that we would then lend our expertise out, and that always entices me, I guess. It's something that I feel needs to be done when you've got some expertise in an area to use it in with other cities to help them.
it'd be kind of paying back. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting a great benefit from ALGA, and the payback would be that in the future,
Right.
that our office is now available this for other cities. So
And when we started this, I was thinking it was important. I still think it's important, and I think it's something that we should probably look at budgeting for in 2014 in our budget. And it's not a lot of money, but I think it's something that would be good for the team, let's put it that way, and would help, number one, give them some verification that they're doing the job correctly, and number two, maybe get some new best practices started too. Not only from people coming in, but if they go out, find something.
Right, I would agree that with, Rich is a long experience. So, Rich, what do you need from us? Do we need to approve this?
I don't think you need to approve that. We'll need to approve on our next item, which relates to the peer review. So, yes, travel expense. We'll need. Should we proceed with that item?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Should have a little sheet there on the 2013 National Conference for the Association of Local Government Auditors. I've been to this in the past. It moves around from region. it's all good regulars with the local auditor and proposed had budget to routine and Danette conference. I think since the committee, I think what we're asking is that we would send Danette that instead of Sunday there for Tuesday, that she'd leave on Saturday and be there on 8 hours of review training, and that you allow me to go just for the review training on that, leave on, for example, Saturday, come back to Nashville. I have the estimate, what we think it'll cost, and what we have. There's obviously we only budgeted one auditor to go for 2 days, so I think enough wiggle room in our budget that we could cover that extra money. I think we'll be okay. Request just permission for Danette and myself to go to Nashville in May.
Any questions for?
Move approval, Aguilar.
Very good. That's been, motion's been made and seconded to approve the travel expenses. In favor, say aye. Review. Open discussion, any items, anybody? Rich?
Nope. Next audit committee, first Thursday in April. It should be on your calendar already. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do you have any other, have you talked to anybody else about being on the committee?
We are working with one, but it's kind of fizzled out, so
Okay, we're still open.
we'll open for another individual,
Okay.
you bet.
I just need, before you leave today, 2 signatures on this agenda approval form for the internal audit charter.
Yeah, those guys out there.
No, they can't. It has to be council members, so I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll get that handled. Very good. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Are we doing no executive session?
No, we didn't. We just put that on the agenda in case we would need.
Needed it.
We didn't see a need today to do that. So.
Okay.
Aguilar.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. It's been seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.